What's up, everyone, and thanks so much for watching. We're actually working on a 2010 Electra Glide. We need to do a few things to. No, that's not what's behind me. That's actually a Road Glide. I just figured, hey, it looks good behind me, whatever. But this bike is one that was actually wrecked. The owner that wrecked it, he brought it to me to get some things both fixed up on it that had been from the crash, and also upgrading the handlebars and upgrading bars on Electra Glides. But just like this Road Glide behind me, are pretty involved project. But at the time, because we were removing everything, it just made sense. So on this bike, we had to remove the complete front end, had to check the fork tubes. It got a new front fender, a new crash bar, and of course the bars, and also doing a complete cleanup because I have never dealt with a bike before that's been down in the dirt or gravel or whatever, and wow, that stuff gets in everything. So it was quite the adventure. But we're going to get into the handlebar part because we were in a hurry on this bike. We didn't have time to film everything, but we'll get, like I said, we'll get into the handlebars, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So here's where we are on this bar swap for this Electra Glide. Now, as you can see, she's obviously already in a lot of pieces. So this is for somebody. So we're kind of in a, not in a hurry, but we don't really have the time to do a full video series on this bike. I'm not going to get into all the extreme specifics of every little step-by-step on this, just because there's a lot of good info and a lot of good videos. So for example, this site right here has some good, this is where we bought the bars through, KST Customs out of Bremen, Georgia. They have some pretty good videos about this, on doing this. I've done plenty of bar swaps before on Softails, Sportsters, Dynas. I've never done an Electra Glide, so this will be new, but it's the same concept. But one thing I did want to show is with the fairing removed, there are only 4 bolts holding this fairing on. Once you remove it, once you disconnect, or excuse me, there's 4 on there's 2 on each side, and then you've got the 3 up here, which holds the windshield in. But once you remove that, you just simply disconnect this switch right here for the headlight, and you can just pull it off. And then when you do that, you can get to everything. So for example, this right here is the plug for one of the handlebar switches we've already removed. This is the plug for the throttle by wire. And then this is another one over here that we have to remove for the other side, which we're going to get into in just a moment. They're easy to find, guys. I mean, when you take everything apart and you get it down this far, you just literally follow the wires. KST Customs claims, and I'm assuming they're right because they do this for a living, that you do not have to extend any of these wires. So, but what we will do is we'll have to reroute this plug kind of down in here. There's a lot of space to do that, just because when you go internal and all that. And one PSA I will call out on these throttles, this is throttle by wire. Make sure that when you pull these wires out of the connectors and repin them, put the pins back in, you get them right. You don't want to fire the bike up and all of a sudden it goes wide open throttle. So something to think about. So we're going to pull this switch housing off right here. This goes to this switch housing here. So the wires literally just fed through the middle. Pretty self-explanatory. Earlier, I think I said that you don't have to extend the wires. That is if you're doing the 10-inch bars. I want to be very clear, because obviously if you go like 12, 14, 16, whatever the numbers they've got, I don't know what all sizes they've got, you're going to have to extend. And I think on a lot of these, they literally make extensions that you can get to plug in, which is freaking cool. I mean, and I think they even sell them where they're pre-wired. I think they charge quite a bit. And then this just snaps off of there. There's a little mount, but just like the other side, this side of the connector will have to be rerouted back down here, just because we're not going to have that length on the wires. This should, look at that. I don't know what I just dropped. So all I'm going to do is hold on to this connector here, fish this through, and you can see, got the whole switch housing off. So with both of those removed, and then we'll pull the bars off with the throttle by wire as well as the heated grips, we will get these suckers over on, like I said, a workbench or whatever, and work on getting these wires through. I'm going to kind of walk you guys through how I run these internal wires and get everything prepped for it. I will say, this internal wiring process, this is one of these things that if you ask God for patience, he gives you an internal wiring project. So you can just take it like that, but it's a lot of steps and it's a lot of patience. So when you're dealing with these switch housing wires, you do need to depin them, and it's not entirely difficult. It's just making sure that you know which wires go where. As you can see, this side has quite a bit. This is an Electra Glide Limited, so it has all kinds of extra gizmos. There may be an HVAC switch on here somewhere. I don't know. This stuff's all foreign to me. But what you have to do with these, the first thing is you got to remove this little piece inside. So yes, I already removed it. I removed it because I am in a hurry to get this bike done. But the way I removed it was just a screwdriver. So just a small screwdriver. You can see here with this little gem, I actually broke this while removing one side. So again, the patience thing, it landed somewhere over there, which means I will never find it, which is fine. But once you get that removed, oh, and there is on KST's website who makes these, they do talk about using a pair of needle nose here. I didn't like that much, me personally, because it was removing material, but I'm sure there's multiple ways to do this. But once you get them exposed, you can start literally depinning them. And once you depin them, then you can run this entire harness through the bars. Now, it goes without saying, take pictures of this stuff, both sides. I took pictures, I wrote it down, grid it out, however you want to do it. Just remember where they go, and your life will be a little bit better because of it. So to me, the depinning process is actually easier than everything else. You would think it's not, but it's really not that bad. I don't know if you can see in here. It is hard to tell, but on each connector, there's almost like a plastic flap, like a door that you have to put a screwdriver down in. You lift it up that way, and then you just pull the connector out. It literally just, and the connector, when you push them back in, they just clip in like this. You want to just pop up, there's a little connector in there. You just pop it up, pull the pin out, just like that. And you have to pull down on the wire as you lift it up. I had to turn the camera a little bit to get a better angle. These connectors, they're kind of like a, you'll just see it when you start working with them. They only go in and out of the holes down here in one way. So once you disconnect them, they can actually twist on you. And so you have to twist them, see, like that. Sometimes you have to actually turn them in the housing to get them to go. There we go. There we is. And guys, all I'm using is like the cheapest of the cheap flat tip screwdriver. You could probably use any kind of a punch or anything here, because again, all you're doing is just lifting up that little clip. Personally, this is why I prefer bikes with very minimal anything on them, but I get it. My original chopper that I built it with factory style switch housings, then I ended up rewiring it. When I rewired it, I literally had a on-off switch, a start button, headlight, brake light, and I'm sure, ignition and all the other important stuff, but you know what I mean. Everything was pretty much with quality switches and then soldered and heat shrinked. Pretty stout. There's more wiring in this harness alone than that entire bike. There we go. Okay, not too bad. Took a little extra time, but that's it all done. Now, when you go to put these back in, little thing that I learned here is, if you can imagine popping all these in where all they snap in, trying to get this to sit down over top of them is near impossible unless somebody has another way of doing it where you install these first. Take this insert here, put it down in there, get it, don't push it all the way, get it to about one click where it's just barely clicked. And I got this trick off the KST website, who makes these bars, by the way. Then you go to run those wires in, and they only go in one way, okay? And when you do, you're actually going to see, how close I can get without this becoming crazy, you can actually see there's a little rectangular spot for each one of these connectors. These are rectangle shaped. You'll see them feed up through there, and you'll actually be able to feel them. And when you're done, when you get all your 5 bajillion wires in there for the one side, you can take your screwdriver or whatever and just push it on down in, and it's ready to go. So that makes it nice and easy. And real quick, before we start running those through, we did already run the throttle side through, as you can see here. So this is, again, patience thing. That's all ran through. The switch housing is hooked up. I'm leaving these padding on because these are very nice and very expensive bars. They almost make me nervous to handle. They come up to a point and then come back down. I'm sure you've probably seen them online. So getting around all these corners with the switch housing, the throttle by wire, excuse me, wrong thing, throttle by wire, and also the heated grips, because this is a limited model, so it's pretty much got everything on it. Now I am using KST's advice on running these and removing the black plastic sleeve over that, just because there is no way, unless again somebody has some kind of magical trick, to get all that to pass through here and run down through. Everything looked fine when it came out. I saw no chafing of wires. They claim the same thing. I am running some tape. I'm going to do it even better down along this bottom side just to kind of help protect these, and then as it comes out. Now this, you can actually see the throttle by wire. We already reconnected it. So this connector is exactly like the other ones. It's just a smaller one. So it's just a little easier to work with. But it goes without saying, get this one right or you could really mess up your throttle when you go to start it. We are going to hook these up later on after we mock them up. The claim is these bars require no extensions, and I don't think they will after I rerouted the housing and the fairing. But we're going to leave these off just in case we have to go and extend these somehow, so I don't have to be monkeying around with any of these removing these pins and so forth. But we're going to get set up to run this other switch housing through this bar as well as that side of the heated grips. Okay, so yes, we're going to do this on the ground because number one, it's great on the knees, and B, I have no space. So, and also we'll throw another thing in there, and that is expensive bars. I'd rather keep them down here on this carpet. Yes, I have carpet in my garage. It's great. So the first thing you got to do is get this ready. There's many different methods for getting wires through bars. You're going to read a lot of different opinions and thoughts on it. This is just one of the ways I've used before. So first of all, you got to have a pull wire. I actually use weed eater line. The Handlebar manufacturer recommends using, I think it's braided copper line, which sounds good, but I'm going to be cheap and I don't want to go to the store, so we're going to do this. But weed eater line works. You got to get it through, and then hey, whenever you're done, you can spool it on your weed eater. You can still use it. But first, a lot of people will take a cord or something like that and either use air to blow it through. I've used a shop vac before to get stuff started. I'm going to use fishing line with a nut tight on the end. And all I'm going to do, folks are probably not going to be able to see all this because I have to move these bars around and I'm trying to film this by myself. Well, if they get in there, I'd be all right. What in the devil? Come on. What are you doing? Oh, it's my handy tape that I put in there. Okay. Pull that through. We got this through. We'll use this piece of fish on line to pull the pull cord through. And you can use whatever means necessary to pull all this through. As I just put a connector on the end because it was easy. So hopefully that'll be the last time I have to use that piece of fishing line. All right, so when you do this pull cord, one thing to think about is you don't want the pull cord to be just long enough. And the reason is because once you successfully, hopefully, pull your first set of wires through, which is this one over here, you're then going to have to pull the heated grips through, or in this case over here, your throttle by wire and also heated grip cord as well. So you want it to be long enough so that when you pull it all the way through, you still have some of your pull cord on both sides, if that makes sense. And that way, if this happens to come disconnected, you can always pull this out, start over, and you still have this in the bars. It's just kind of a good way to help you out a little bit. So we have plenty here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take electrical tape. We're going to wrap this around. You want to go all the way to the end and just kind of create a point. Goes without saying, try to get this as tight as possible, but you also want to keep it slim. You don't want to get this all bundled up because the thicker this gets, the harder that's going to be to pull through, because this part right here is the tough part. Once you get it past that first corner, especially on these bars, because these bars again have a point, it's pretty much smooth sailing. But this is a push-pull procedure, meaning you don't just pull, you need to push with the wires from the other side as well. There's a reason why places charge what they do to pre-run internal wires. Okay, let the fun begin. We actually, there we go. It just takes some time. So I had to do a few things off camera. That's because I can't get into some of the contorted positions I need to be in to do this and actually film it. So maybe one of these days I'll have a better workbench and maybe somebody filming me. But so I had to start over. Remember the patience thing. So what happened was this was actually pulling through the tape, and that's because I got in a hurry. I wasn't pushing enough from this end, but now we got it through. So just backed it out, redid it, cleaned it up. It went through just fine. You can see this wire is still through here, free and clear. So now we get to run the fun little heated grips through. So this, in theory, so you can see, we took the same pull cord, we rerouted it up through here. So we've already got these wires in there. So now we're going to try the fun of getting this. And if we can get this through, then these bars are wired. Patience prevailed, I do believe. I had to get a little, turn into a contortionist for that. So we got the grips on. Man, those are going to look good, but that is a job, I will be honest, to get heated grips, throttle by wire, and all the switches for an ultra limited. Wow, that's a lot. We will catch back up with you guys once we tidy all this crazy mess up and I get a moment to inspect all this. We are now ready to get these bars on the bike. Looking so forward to seeing how they look whenever they're done. A couple things to note. I did go in and obviously tidy some of this up. Got my switch connectors back on and all that. But didn't like how these were exiting down here. Took some extra heat shrink and just kind of forced it up in there before I put all the connectors on, just to kind of help give it some more protection. Probably didn't need it, but made me feel a little bit better anyway. And it's, kind of tidies it up a little bit better. But we're going to kind of do the sped up version of putting these on because I will have some help. And also this does take a while. It's not really difficult. It's just, you have to make sure you get your wire connectors all put away the way they're supposed to be and connected. And then you got to get your alignment right, get your controls back on and all that. It's quite a few different steps, but not entirely difficult. If I can do this on a fully Electra Glide Limited, anybody can do this on any bike. But let's get started on that, and then we'll kind of take a recap or walk around when we're all done to show the finished product. All right, we're going to start getting this clutch lever on here. So for this clutch cable, if you notice, if you can see, it is not routing through the factory opening on the fairing. After checking with the bar manufacturer, the factory cable will work. Some situations you've got to route it through another spot, which seems odd to me. So that means there are definite variances in these Harley-Davidson cables, which I was not aware of. That looks pretty good. All right, we're going to tackle this master cylindre side. Just to emphasize, we're doing this very simple. This is not a big shop. I don't have a big workbench. Even whenever we are running these internal, you saw I was doing it on the ground. And the reason I'm pointing that out isn't because I don't have that stuff. It's because you guys can do this stuff anywhere. We now have some clearance. We have some clearance. Had to free up some space on this brake line. But what was going on in here, you guys can see right in here, there's this little block, which is pretty handy to zip tie these brake lines to. So I released this top one. My hand's in the way, but I released this top one to give me just a little bit of free play from here up to there. It's perfectly fine. I'm just going to re-zip tie this one back down there, and then probably go ahead and just zip tie this line and just make sure it's secure. But I'm kind of digging these brake lines that Harley used on these instead of using the solid lines. It really gives you a little flexibility. But those things, for the most part, are on, and they're looking good, and I'm digging them. Oh yes, and one thing on the throttle by wire I've got to say, two things I noticed. Number one, on these bars, got a little more gap right here than I had wanted. And if I push too hard, it's obviously slowing down the throttle response, or hindering it from spinning, I should say. So I don't like that. Might mess with that some later. But man, as much as I'm against throttle by wire, God, that makes it easy for putting that on. It just goes right on and you don't have those throttle cables coming down. But give me my throttle cables any day. It's going to be much easier to work on, and I'm not going to sit here and sweat over getting the wires wrong. Well, we got these bars fully installed. Even took it down the road for a test. These things made a world of difference in just how they feel, they look, everything. I was pretty impressed with them. Wanted to just kind of show, though, a few things that were wrong with this bike before we get on to the cleaning part, because we are going to wrap this video up here. This bike did go down, unfortunately. You can see there's some nasty road rash right there, some fun scratches back there on the tour pack. Down here on this bag, the crash bars, ironically, were completely mangled up. The fender, you can see that's definitely not going to buff out. So we put a Street Glide style fender on it and just kind of brought it back to life a little bit. The bike itself is fine. It's what you would just call flesh wounds all over it. I don't know what he's going to want to do with the paint. I am not a paint and body guy, never will pretend to be. That's the extent of my paint work right there, is primer paint combo. The bike is rideable, but I don't know if he's going to want to go and shoot clear on it, whatever the options may be. This light bar was actually bent, so I fussed with this one over here, this spotlight, forever to get them lined up. The bar itself is slightly bent, but we got the lights pretty centered, so that can always be changed. That stuff can be swapped out. It's minor. The bike itself is in great shape, but took it to about 75, 80 miles an hour, and it's just straight and true. Perfect. It does great. So I checked over the fork tubes and all that. It's a shame that it had to go down, but it happens, unfortunately. But it's nice to see the bike get back on the road. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching so far. I've been pretty impressed with this bike. It's come a long way from a bike that had been about a year ago that had been crashed, and of course, obviously came here on a trailer, to now being able to go down the road straight and true. It really is great. I mean, it's good to see some of these bikes get back out on the road like this. We're going to move on to washing this bike next, really just deep cleaning it from the frame up, and we are going to kind of take you guys along for that. But if you can, please subscribe, please like this video, and we will be chatting with you guys soon.